I spent 15 years exterminating pests from strangers' homes, while my own wife was the parasite eating me alive from the inside. The headlamp beam cut through the darkness as I adjusted the strap and dropped to my knees at the crawlspace entrance. Tuesday morning, 8:47 a.m. Just another routine check under 847 Maple Ridge Drive. My house. 15 years running Brennan Pest Solutions, and I still hated crawling into tight spaces. But last week's rain meant termite inspection time. The concrete scraped against my knees as I army crawled toward the foundation corner. Above me, the house settled with its familiar groans. Amber's heels clicking across the kitchen floor as she grabbed her coffee, probably already running late for work. The kids had caught the school bus 20 minutes ago. Maya chattering about some science project, Connor dragging his backpack like it weighed 50 pounds. I swept my flashlight across the wooden beams, checking for the telltale mud tubes that meant trouble. The musty air filled my lungs, that distinctive basement smell of concrete and old wood that every pest guy knows. My back already ached from the cramped position, reminding me why I needed to hire another tech soon. 42 years old and my body kept score of every crawl space I'd ever entered. My light caught something odd about 15 feet in. A dark stain on the concrete that shouldn't be there. I shifted closer, my work shirt catching on a nail. Not water damage, I knew that pattern. Not pest droppings either. Something else entirely. The stain looked fresh, maybe a week old, with an oily consistency that made my trained eye pause. I ran my gloved finger across it, feeling the texture. Definitely not structural. Food, maybe? Oil from equipment? My methodical mind started cataloging possibilities. 15 years of finding problems in hidden places taught you to notice everything, even the stuff that probably meant nothing. Above, the refrigerator hummed its familiar tune, and Amber's car started in the driveway. 20 feet deeper into the crawl space, my headlamp illuminated something that made me stop cold. Cigarette butts, 4 of them, scattered near the back wall like someone had been sitting here regularly. I scooted closer, my pulse quickening. Marlboro Reds, the expensive kind. I smoked Camels when I bothered smoking at all, the cheap ones from the gas station. Amber quit years ago, back when Maya was little and going through that health-conscious phase. These butts were fresh, not yellowed with age. Recent ash, maybe days old. The concrete around them showed scuff marks, like someone had made themselves comfortable here. My mind raced through possibilities. Contractor from the roof repair last month? But that was exterior work. Previous owner's leftovers? We'd lived here 8 years. None of it made sense. The cigarettes were too fresh, too deliberately placed. I bagged them carefully, my pest control training kicking in. Document everything. Preserve evidence. Even when you didn't know what kind of evidence you were preserving. My flashlight swept further and stopped on something that made my breath catch. A sleeping bag, rolled tight against the foundation wall. Navy blue, high-end material with waterproof backing. Definitely not ours. We had the old Coleman bags from when we used to camp, back when the kids were small and family trips didn't feel like military operations. Someone had been sleeping in my crawl space. The sleeping bag was clean, recently used. No dust coating, no spider webs in the corners. My pest control instincts screamed danger. This wasn't random. Homeless people didn't choose crawl spaces under occupied houses. Too risky, too complicated. Someone chose this spot deliberately. Above me, my house suddenly felt less safe, less mine. The familiar creaks now sounded ominous, like footsteps I'd never noticed before. I unrolled the sleeping bag with careful precision, my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside, more evidence. An empty Evian water bottle, protein bar wrapper from some organic brand I'd never heard of, and a small LED flashlight. Expensive stuff. Someone with money had made themselves comfortable here. The protein bar wrapper was dated last week, Thursday. My phone buzzed. A text from Amber. What do you want for dinner? Thinking tacos? Normal life, normal questions, while my world tilted sideways in the darkness under my own house. I crawled backward toward the entrance, dragging the evidence with me. My knees screamed against the concrete, but I barely felt it. Someone with access to my house, my crawl space, had been living here. The violation felt complete, like coming home to find your bedroom ransacked. Emerging into daylight, I stood in my kitchen and stared at the evidence bag containing the cigarettes. The house felt different now. Every shadow could hide someone. I checked the locks on the back door, peered out the kitchen window at the yard. Amber's coffee mug sat in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim. Normal morning debris that now felt like clues to something I didn't understand. My hands shook as I poured coffee. 15 years of marriage, of thinking I knew every inch of this house, every sound it made. What else didn't I know? When Amber returned from her Tuesday errands that afternoon, I was waiting in the kitchen. The evidence bag sat on the counter between us like an accusation. "Found these in our crawl space," I said, watching her face carefully. Amber glanced at the cigarettes, her expression unreadable. "Weird," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Must be from the previous owners." "We've lived here 8 years, Amber." She shrugged, already moving toward the refrigerator. "Maybe they fell through a crack or something. Old houses, you know? Marlboro Reds are expensive, and these are fresh." Her fingers drummed nervously on the counter. "I don't know what to tell you, Jack. Maybe someone was working on the house and forgot them?" Too casual, too quick with explanations that didn't make sense. I'd seen enough lying clients try to explain away obvious pest damage to recognize deflection. That evening, I couldn't concentrate on dinner conversation. Maya chattered about her science project, something involving volcanoes and baking soda, while Connor pushed peas around his plate like tiny green soldiers. Amber seemed normal, asking about homework and planning weekend activities. But I watched her differently now, noting how she avoided eye contact when I mentioned the crawl space, how her laugh sounded forced when Maya made a joke. After the kids went to bed, I brought it up again. "I'm calling the police tomorrow," I said, loading the dishwasher. Amber's fork clattered against her plate. "Don't be dramatic, Jack. It's probably nothing. Someone was sleeping under our house." "You don't know that." "Could be anything." Her voice wavered on the last word. "You're scaring the kids with this paranoia." But I wasn't paranoid. I was trained to find hidden problems, to notice what didn't belong. And everything about this felt wrong. Unable to sleep, I returned to the crawl space at midnight with my professional-grade equipment. The heavy-duty flashlight revealed details I'd missed in my morning shock. Footprints in the dust, leading from the access point to the sleeping area. Size 10 boots, not my size 12s. The prints were recent, overlapping my own from this morning. Someone had been coming and going regularly, probably for weeks. My breath fogged in the cold air as I followed the trail. Near the sleeping bag area, deep indentations in the dirt showed where someone had sat for hours. Watching, waiting, planning what? I photographed everything with my phone, treating my own home like a crime scene. Because maybe it was. The sleeping bag showed wear patterns. This person had been here multiple times. Regular visits, comfortable routine. Someone who felt safe here, who knew the family schedule, who knew when the house would be empty. Back in the kitchen, I spread the evidence across the table like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Cigarettes, sleeping bag, water bottle, protein bar wrapper. All expensive brands, not random homeless person supplies. This person had money, made choices. The pattern suggested regular visits, not one-time emergency shelter. My mind cataloged possibilities. Stalker, burglar casing the house, someone with a key. The last thought chilled me. Who had keys to my house? Family, close friends, trusted contractors. people I thought I could trust. As I examined the sleeping bag one final time before storing it, my fingers caught on something in the corner pocket, a crumpled receipt. My hands trembled as I smoothed it out under the kitchen light. Gas station receipt. Corner mart on 5th Street, 3 blocks away. Thursday afternoon, 2:47 p.m. 3 days ago, when I was at work, when Amber was supposedly running errands. The items made my stomach drop. 2 Red Bulls, pack of Marlboro Reds, box of Trojans. $23.47 total. Cash payment. I stared at the receipt until the numbers blurred. This wasn't some random person seeking shelter. This was recent. This was planned. This was still happening. And Thursday afternoon, Amber had come home late, claiming traffic from the grocery store. The insurance office felt different when I walked back in Tuesday morning. Same beige carpet, same motivational posters about securing your future. But now it felt like a crime scene. The manila folder from yesterday sat in my truck, filled with forged signatures and fraudulent paperwork. I'd spent the night staring at those documents, my pest control mind cataloging every detail. "Mr. Brennan," the receptionist smiled. "Back again so soon?" "Need to clarify a few things about my policy," I said, keeping my voice steady. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting that familiar institutional glow. My hands felt steady now. The shock had worn off, replaced by something colder, more focused. She directed me to a different agent this time, a younger guy with nervous energy and coffee stains on his tie. "How can I help you today?" I spread the paperwork across his desk like evidence at a trial. "These changes to my policy. I need to understand the process. How exactly does someone submit modifications?" He scanned the documents, his eyebrows raising. "Well, typically the policyholder would come in person or work through one of our certified agents. These appear to be processed through our Portland office." He pointed to a stamp in the corner. "Derek Walsh handled this personally." Derek Walsh. The name still hit like a punch to the gut. "Is that unusual?" I asked. "Having an agent from another office handle local business?" The kid shrugged. "Not really, especially if there's a personal relationship with the client. Some agents prefer to work with people they know." He paused, studying the signature line. "Though I have to say this is a pretty substantial policy modification. Usually we'd require additional verification for changes this significant." I leaned back in the uncomfortable office chair. "What kind of verification?" "Photo ID, sometimes a notarized document. Depends on the agent's discretion." He clicked through his computer screen. "Derek Walsh has been with us for 8 years. Excellent track record. If he approved these changes, they would have met all our requirements. 8 years. Long enough to know how to bend the rules. Long enough to know which corners could be cut." "I'd like to see his contact information," I said. "Professional purposes." The agent hesitated. "I'm not sure I can provide that without proper authorization." "It's my policy," I said quietly. "My signature he processed. I think that qualifies as proper authorization." Something in my tone made him reconsider. He scribbled an address and phone number on a sticky note. "Portland office, downtown district." I pocketed the note and gathered my papers. Walking to my truck, I felt the weight of new information settling in my chest. Derek Walsh wasn't just Amber's lover. He was her inside man. Someone with the credentials and access to make their fraud look legitimate. The drive home took me past Corner Mart on 5th Street. Same place where that receipt had been printed 3 days ago. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there, engine running. Through the windows, I could see the clerk behind the counter, probably the same one who'd sold those Red Bulls and cigarettes to whoever had been sleeping in my crawlspace. My phone buzzed. Text from Amber. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." Working late, right. I drove home and parked in my driveway, looking up at the house that was apparently worth $485,000, according to Derek Walsh's assessment. The same house where someone had been camping in my crawlspace like a goddamn vagrant. The same house where my wife had been planning my financial destruction for months. Inside, Maya was at the kitchen table doing homework. Connor sprawled on the living room floor with his Nintendo. Normal Tuesday evening scene, except nothing was normal anymore. "Hey, Dad," Maya looked up from her math book. "Mom said you might be working late this week." "Maybe," I said, ruffling her hair. "Depends on what I find." That evening, after the kids were in bed, I spread everything across my workbench in the garage. The insurance documents, the hotel receipt, photos of the cigarette butts and sleeping bag. I grabbed a legal pad and started making connections, drawing lines between dates and names like I was mapping termite damage. The timeline was becoming clearer. 14 months ago, Amber starts business trips to Portland. 3 months ago, life insurance policy changes submitted. 6 weeks ago, additional asset declarations filed. 3 weeks ago, evidence discovered in crawlspace. 3 days ago, hotel receipt dated, someone buying supplies. They'd been planning this for over a year, methodically, professionally, using Derek Walsh's position to legitimize their fraud while keeping me completely in the dark. I pulled out my laptop and did what any pest control specialist does when tracking an infestation. I followed the trail. Derek Walsh, Pinnacle Development Group, Portland office. His company bio showed a smiling man in an expensive suit standing in front of luxury condos, specializing in high-value properties and investment opportunities. High-value properties, like my house. The pieces clicked together with mechanical precision. Derek wasn't just processing fraudulent insurance claims, he was probably positioning himself to benefit when those claims got paid out. Maybe even had buyers lined up for our property. My phone rang. Amber. "Hey, honey." Her voice sounded strained. "Just wanted to check in. Long day at the office." "I bet," I said, staring at Derek Walsh's photo on my laptop screen. "Everything going well with your projects?" A pause. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" "No reason. Just asking." I could hear traffic in the background, car door slamming. "Sounds busy there." "Hotel restaurant," she said quickly. "Client dinner running late. You know how these things go." Hotel restaurant. Like the one where that receipt was printed. "Which hotel?" I asked casually. Another pause, longer this time. The Marriott downtown. Look, I should go. The client's waiting." "Sure thing. Drive safe." After she hung up, I sat in the garage, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal. The Marriott downtown, in Portland, no doubt, where she was probably sharing a room with Derek Walsh right now, planning their next move in this elaborate con game. But they'd made a mistake. They'd underestimated the methodical nature of a man who spent his life tracking hidden problems, following trails, documenting infestations. They thought they were hunting me, but they'd left tracks everywhere. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing. If they wanted to play this game professionally, I'd give them a professional response. Every date, every forged signature, every fraudulent claim, I documented all with the same precision I used to map termite damage. The garage felt cold, but I kept working. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, families sleeping peacefully in their beds, trusting that their foundations were solid. But I knew better. I knew how much damage could hide beneath the surface, eating away at the structure until everything collapsed. By midnight, I had 20 pages of documentation. Timeline, evidence, witness statements from the insurance office. A complete case file that would make any investigator proud. I saved the document and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls. Not to confront them. That would only drive them underground. No, I'd do what any good pest control specialist does when dealing with an infestation. I'd call in the professionals. I locked up the garage and headed inside. The house felt different now. Not like home, but like a crime scene I was still processing. In the morning, I'd start the real work, the systematic elimination of the problem. But tonight, I'd sleep in my own bed, in my own house, while my wife was in Portland with her partner in fraud. Let them think they were still in control. Let them think their plan was working. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I called in sick to work, first time in 3 years. Instead, I drove to the bank where Amber and I kept our joint accounts, the same accounts that were probably listed in Derek Walsh's asset assessments. The bank manager, a woman named Rita with kind eyes and a firm handshake, reviewed my request with professional courtesy. "You'd like to review all account activity for the past year?" "That's right. Joint accounts, individual accounts, any loans or credit applications?" "Everything." She typed rapidly, her screen reflecting in her glasses. "I can provide statements, but for detailed transaction analysis, you might want to speak with our fraud prevention department." Fraud prevention. The words hung in the air between us. "Is there a particular concern, Mr. Brennan?" I chose my words carefully. "Just want to make sure everything's in order. Recent insurance review flagged some discrepancies." Rita's expression shifted slightly. In banking, discrepancies was a red flag word. "Let me pull up your complete profile." For the next hour, I sat in her office reviewing printouts that told the story of my financial life. Regular deposits from Brennan Pest Solutions, mortgage payments, utility bills, kids' school expenses, the normal rhythm of a working family's money. But there were anomalies. Cash withdrawals I didn't remember making, transfers to accounts I'd never seen before. Small amounts, spread over months. The kind of systematic siphoning that would be easy to miss unless you were looking for it. "This account," I pointed to a transfer entry. "I don't recognize this routing number." Rita checked her screen. "That's a business account. Walsh Development Holdings, LLC." Walsh Development Holdings. My hand stayed steady, but inside, everything tilted. Derek Walsh hadn't just been processing fraudulent insurance claims. He'd been systematically draining our accounts. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic alerts, but over 14 months it added up to nearly $23,400. "I need copies of everything," I said quietly. Rita nodded and began printing. The laser printer hummed steadily, each page another piece of evidence in what was becoming a federal case. Wire fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft. They'd committed enough crimes to put them both away for years. But I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in solutions. Walking back to my truck with a manila envelope full of bank records, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. The infestation had been identified. The scope of damage was documented. Now it was time for treatment. I drove to the office of Patricia Vance, the family attorney who'd handled our house purchase 15 years ago. Her secretary squeezed me in between appointments, and I, sitting across from a woman who'd aged gracefully into her 60s, silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Jack," she smiled warmly. "It's been what, 5 years? How are Amber and the kids?" "That's actually why I'm here," I said, placing the manila envelopes on her desk. "I need to discuss some complications." For the next 2 hours, I laid out everything. The insurance fraud, the bank transfers, the systematic deception. Patricia listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her leather chair. "This is substantial," she said finally. "Federal crimes, multiple jurisdictions. You're looking at a complex prosecution." "I'm not looking for prosecution," I said. "I'm looking for protection." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Explain. They think they're hunting me, setting me up for some kind of insurance scam. But they don't know I found their trail." I leaned forward. "I want to disappear legally before they can spring whatever trap they're planning." Patricia nodded slowly. Asset protection. Preemptive legal maneuvering. She tapped her pen against the desk. It's possible, but it requires careful timing. Once they realize you're onto them, they'll accelerate their timeline. How long do we have? Assuming they don't know you've discovered the evidence? Maybe a week. 2 at most. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. We'll need to move quickly. Asset transfers, account changes, legal documentation. Everything has to be airtight before they make their move. I left Patricia's office with a plan and a timeline. 7 days to legally disappear before Amber and Derek Walsh could execute whatever endgame they'd been planning. 7 days to turn the tables on predators who thought they were hunting easy prey. But first, I had one more stop to make. The office of Thomas Kellerman, private investigator, occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse downtown. Kellerman himself was exactly what you'd expect. Ex-cop, thick build, suspicious eyes that missed nothing. His handshake felt like a vice. "Pest control, huh?" he said, reviewing my business card. "We're in similar lines of work, both dealing with problems people want to pretend don't exist." I liked him immediately. "I need surveillance," I said. "Professional documentation of ongoing criminal activity." Kellerman leaned back in his chair. "Divorce case?" "Fraud case, with divorce implications." I showed him the evidence. Photos, bank records, insurance documents. Kellerman studied everything with the methodical attention of a man who'd spent years building criminal cases. "This is good work," he said finally. "Thorough documentation. You missed your calling. Should have been a detective." "I track infestations for a living. Same skill set." Kellerman laughed, a dry, professional sound. "Fair enough. What do you need from me?" "Video evidence. Documentation of meetings between the subjects. Proof of ongoing conspiracy." I paused. "And I need it fast. They're planning something for the next week or 2. "I can do that. Professional rates, complete discretion. How dirty do you want to get?" I thought about that question. How dirty was I willing to get to protect myself and my kids from people who'd been systematically destroying our lives? "As dirty as necessary," I said. "But everything legal, everything admissible in court." Kellerman nodded. "That's what I like to hear. Professional standards." He pulled out a contract. "Standard retainer is $5,000. That covers surveillance, documentation, and a complete evidence package." I wrote the check without hesitation. Money well spent to protect what was left of my family's future. Walking back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. For over a year, I'd been a passive victim in someone else's game. But now I was setting the rules. My phone buzzed. Text from Amber. "Trip extended another day. Client wants to review additional properties." Additional properties, right. I texted back. "No problem. Take your time." Let her take all the time she wanted. Every day she spent with Derek Walsh was another day for Kellerman to document their conspiracy. Another day for Patricia to prepare our legal counterattack. Another day for me to position myself for the endgame. That evening I sat in my garage again, but this time I wasn't studying evidence. I was planning. 7 days to execute a complete financial and legal disappearing act. 7 days to turn predators into prey. The infestation had been identified. The treatment plan was in place. Now it was time to eliminate the problem. I sat in Patricia Vance's office, watching her manicured fingers tap against the mahogany desk. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps trapped in plastic. Bank statements spread between us like evidence at a crime scene. "There are 3 joint accounts here I've never seen," I said, my voice sounding hollow in the sterile air. Patricia's pen clicked against the papers. "All opened in the last 14 months. Amber forged your signature on the applications." The smell of fresh coffee drifted from her assistant's desk, mixing with that antiseptic law office smell. My hands rested flat on my knees, steady despite the tremor building in my chest. This wasn't passion. This was methodical, calculated. Worse than if she'd just fallen into bed with someone. Patricia slid a manila folder across the desk. "There's more, Jack. Credit cards. A home equity line of credit." I opened the folder with the same careful precision I used checking traps. 17,000 in credit card debt. A second mortgage for $85,000. The papers felt thin between my fingers, but the weight of them crushed down on my shoulders. "I never signed any of this," I whispered. "The signatures are good forgeries. Very good." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "Professional quality." Outside, traffic hummed past the third-floor windows. Normal people living normal lives. My life, dissected in black and white on expensive paper. 15 years of marriage reduced to fraudulent documents and forged signatures. "How long do I have?" I asked. "Before what?" "Before she realizes I know." Patricia leaned back in her leather chair. "Thomas Kellerman's surveillance suggests they're moving fast. There's a property purchase in motion." The bank vault smelled like old metal and money. I followed the manager down narrow aisles between safety deposit boxes, my work boots echoing on polished concrete. Each step felt like walking deeper into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "Box 247 was opened jointly by your wife and Derek Walsh 6 months ago," the manager explained, keys jingling against his belt. I stopped walking. "Derek Walsh?" "Yes, sir. Derek Walsh from Pinnacle Development Group." The name hit me like cold water. Not some random affair. A real estate developer. Someone with money, connections, the kind of soft hands that never touched honest work. The manager checked his computer printout again, squinting through wire-rimmed glasses. "You're certain about the name?" "Absolutely. He's been in several times. Nice gentleman. Drives a silver BMW." My chest tightened. The lies had layers I was still peeling back, like stripping wallpaper to find rot underneath. Each revelation worse than the last. I stared at the open safety deposit box. Inside, neat bundles of cash, property deeds, and a manila envelope marked contingency in Amber's careful handwriting. My hands shook slightly as I lifted out the envelope. 23,000 in cash, bound with rubber bands. A deed to a cabin in the mountains I'd never heard of. Investment documents for properties I'd never seen. The bank manager shifted uncomfortably behind me. "Sir, technically you have joint access, but—" "I'm taking what's mine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The fluorescent light above flickered. Everything felt surreal, like watching someone else's life fall apart in slow motion. The metal walls seemed to close in. This box represented 14 months of systematic theft, money skimmed from our accounts, redirected, hidden. While I worked 60-hour weeks treating termites and setting mousetraps, my wife was building an escape route. I counted the cash twice, exactly $23,400, the same amount missing from our business account over the past year. Money I'd assumed went to household expenses, Maya's orthodontist, Connor's soccer league fees. Instead, it funded her exit strategy. Thomas Kellerman's surveillance photos spread across my kitchen table like a horror movie storyboard. Amber and Derek Walsh entering banks together, signing papers at a real estate office, kissing in restaurant parking lots while I crawled through crawlspaces 50 miles away. "They've been house hunting for 3 months," Thomas said, his gravelly voice cutting through my shock. He lit another cigarette, the smoke curling toward the ceiling fan. 4 different properties. They settled on one last week. The photos blurred together. My wife of 15 years, planning a future with another man using money stolen from our children's college funds. I held my coffee cup but couldn't taste anything. The kitchen where we'd shared breakfast for years felt foreign now, like I was visiting someone else's house. "There's a purchase agreement," Thomas added quietly, sliding another document across the table. I read it twice before the words sank in. A 4-bedroom colonial in Riverside Heights. Purchase price, $420,000. Down payment, $85,000. The exact amount of the second mortgage on our house. The mortgage I'd never authorized, never signed for, never knew existed until Patricia showed me the forged documents. Closing date is next Friday, Thomas said, while you're supposed to be at Maya's school play. I set the paper down carefully. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. My daughter's performance, while my wife performed the final act of our marriage. Maya had been practicing for weeks, excited about her solo in the spring musical. I'd promised to be there, front row, like always. They think you don't know, Thomas continued. Walsh has been telling people he's buying the house for his elderly mother. The children's voices drifted from the living room where they were watching some cartoon. Maya laughed at something on screen, the sound pure and innocent. Connor called out, asking for help with his math homework. Dad's busy right now, Maya told him protectively. She'd noticed. The tension, the late-night phone calls, the way her parents no longer ate dinner together. My throat constricted. They didn't know their world was about to shatter. The laughter from the next room felt like glass breaking. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint checking account. Balance, $347. Last week it held $12,000. Amber's withdrawals marched down the screen like soldiers. $2,000 here, $1,500 there, $4,000 to Walsh Construction Services. My pest control business account showed similar drainage. She'd been systematic, careful, leaving just enough to avoid triggering alerts. The computer screen glowed in the darkening kitchen. Outside, suburban life continued normally. Neighbors walking dogs, kids riding bikes. Inside, I calculated how thoroughly I'd been hollowed out. The numbers didn't lie, even when everything else did. Patricia called at 9 p.m. Jack, I've been reviewing the insurance policy changes. The beneficiary modification was filed the same day as the first joint account opening. I sat in my garage, surrounded by my work equipment, pest control chemicals and monitoring devices, the tools of my trade for finding hidden problems. She planned this from the beginning. It appears so. The timeline suggests a coordinated effort. Patricia's silence confirmed what I already knew. The garage smelled like insecticide and motor oil, familiar scents that used to comfort me. Now everything felt contaminated. Even my sanctuary wasn't safe from her reach. There's something else, Patricia continued. The life insurance policy. If something happened to you, she'd collect $750,000. My hands went cold. What kind of something? Accidents happen in your line of work, Jack. Chemical exposure, falls, equipment malfunctions. The policy specifically covers occupational hazards. I thought about all the tight spaces I crawled into, the chemicals I handled, the old houses with questionable structural integrity. How easy it would be for an accident to happen. How convenient for a grieving widow with a secret boyfriend and a new house to move into. Jack, are you there? Yeah, I'm here, but I wasn't sure for how much longer. I spread all the evidence across my workbench like I was planning a complex job. Bank statements, photographs, insurance documents, property records. 14 months of systematic theft and betrayal mapped out under the harsh fluorescent garage light. My phone showed 23 missed calls from Amber. I hadn't answered in 4 days. The silence felt powerful, like I'd finally stopped being prey. My hands moved methodically, organizing documents by date. This was what I did best. Identify the problem, plan the solution, execute with precision. For 30 years, I'd tracked down infestations, found the source, eliminated the threat. This was just another job. A bigger job. Thomas had left me copies of everything. Amber and Derek Walsh entering the real estate office on Elm Street. Amber signing documents at First National Bank, the two of them looking at paint samples at Home Depot, like a normal couple planning their future together. With my money, my children's future, my life's work converted into their down payment. I picked up the purchase agreement again. The house was beautiful in the photos. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, granite countertops, hardwood floors throughout. The kind of place Amber had always said we'd move to someday, when the business was more established. Someday had arrived, just not for me. The garage door opener hummed to life. Amber's car pulled into the driveway. I heard her heels clicking across the concrete, then stopping. She'd seen the light under the door. "Jack, are you in there?" I didn't answer. Let her wonder. Let her worry about what I might know, what I might have found. The hunt had become the trap. Her footsteps retreated toward the house. A few minutes later, I heard her talking on the phone, voice muffled through the walls. Probably calling Derek Walsh, telling him something felt wrong, that her husband was acting strange. She had no idea how strange things were about to get. The documents spread across my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. Bank statements, insurance papers, hotel receipts, photos of that damn sleeping bag. 15 years of marriage reduced to manila folders and paper clips. My hands shook as I organized everything by date, the way I'd catalog an infestation. Start with the entry point, track the damage, document the spread. The morning light streaming through the windows felt different now. This house, our house, suddenly felt like a place I was just visiting. I touched my wedding ring, turning it around my finger. The metal had worn thin over the years, just like everything else. I opened my laptop and started scanning documents. Each page that fed through made a mechanical whirring sound, like my old fax machine at the shop. Bank statement showing the unauthorized transfers. Whir. Insurance documents with my forged signature. Whir. Photos of Derek Walsh's cigarette butts from my crawlspace. Whir. The methodical work calmed my racing heart. This was familiar territory, documenting evidence, building a case. I'd done it 1,000 times with termite damage reports and pest control assessments. The only difference was this time, the infestation was in my marriage. My phone sat on the counter, Patricia Vance's number already pulled up. I'd met Patricia 3 years ago when we bought the house. Sharp woman in her 50s who'd handled our real estate closing. Now I needed her for something else entirely. I pressed call and listened to it ring twice before her voice came through, crisp and professional. Vance Legal Services, Patricia speaking. Patricia, it's Jack Brennan. We worked together on the Maple Ridge house purchase a few years back. Jack, of course. How can I help you? I took a deep breath, staring at the evidence spread before me. I need to transfer a house deed. Today, before my wife gets back from her business trip. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Patricia's voice came back, more careful now. Jack, that's complicated. The original purchase agreement has both your names on it. Are we talking about a separation situation? We're talking about a fraud situation. I picked up one of the bank statements, the numbers swimming before my tired eyes. She's been stealing from our accounts, forging documents. I have proof. I see. Patricia's tone shifted into lawyer mode. The good news is there might be a loophole. Your business loan secured the initial down payment, which creates a legal pathway for sole ownership claims. But Jack, this is serious business. Are you certain about this course of action? My fingers found the corner of a hotel receipt, the Riverside Inn, where Amber had supposedly never been. I'm certain. Then we need to move fast. I can have papers drawn up within 2 hours, but you'll need a cash buyer. The market's hot right now, but finding someone who can close today. She paused. I might know someone. Real estate investor who specializes in quick purchases. He pays below market value, but he can close same day. How much below market? The house is worth about $480. He'd probably offer $400, cash, as is. $80,000 less than what we could get on the open market, but $80,000 more than I'd have if Amber cleaned out our accounts and disappeared with Derek Walsh. Set it up. Jack, once we do this, there's no going back. Are you prepared for the consequences? I looked around the kitchen where Amber had made coffee every morning for 15 years, where Maya had done homework at this same table, where Connor had spilled juice on the floor just last week. The consequences started when she brought another man into my house. I'll make the calls. 2 hours later, I stood in my driveway watching a silver BMW pull up. The man who got out looked like every real estate investor I'd ever met. Pressed khakis, polo shirt, clipboard in hand. He moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Mr. Brennan, I'm here about the property. He didn't offer his name, just extended a hand for a brief shake. Mind if I take a look around? I led him through the house, watching him examine everything with clinical detachment. He noted the hardwood floors Amber had insisted on, the updated kitchen we'd saved 2 years to afford, the master bedroom where I'd found her phone buzzing with Derek Walsh's messages. Crawlspace accessible? He asked. Through the basement. I didn't mention what I'd found down there. Let the next owner discover their own secrets. He spent 10 minutes in the basement, another 5 walking the exterior. When he came back, his expression hadn't changed. $400,000, cash, as is. I can have a cashier's check cut within the hour. Deal. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd spread the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and signed papers. Patricia had arrived with a notary, and the whole process took less than 30 minutes. The buyer handed me a cashier's check with more zeros than I'd ever seen on a single piece of paper. Pleasure doing business, he said, already heading for his car. I stared at the check after he left. $400,000, my freedom, bought and paid for. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of boxes and packing tape. I loaded my truck with everything that mattered: clothes, tools, photo albums from better times. The hardest part was Maya and Connor's rooms. Their beds still unmade from when they'd left with Amber for what they thought was a weekend getaway. I packed their favorite toys, their school photos, anything that might matter later when the lawyers started dividing up our lives. I paused at Connor's desk, where he'd left a half-finished drawing of our family. 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a house with a crooked chimney. My family, written in crayon across the top. I folded it carefully and tucked it into a box. The house echoed as I carried boxes to the truck. 15 years of memories bouncing off empty walls. First steps, birthday parties, quiet Sunday mornings reading the paper while Amber made pancakes. I closed each door carefully, knowing I'd never open them again. By evening, the house stood empty except for the furniture that came with it. I did one final walkthrough, my footsteps unnaturally loud on the hardwood floors. In the master bedroom, I found one of Amber's earrings under the dresser, a small gold hoop she'd worn to our anniversary dinner last year. I left it there for whoever came next. My new townhouse felt impossibly small after the sprawling family home. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 1 person. I sat on a folding chair I'd bought at a gas station, surrounded by boxes and silence. The laptop sat on the kitchen counter, waiting. I'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times, but now that it was here, my fingers felt clumsy on the keyboard. What do you say to someone who betrayed everything you'd built together? I started typing. Found your sleeping bag in our crawlspace. Found your secret accounts with Derek Walsh. Found the hotel receipts and forged insurance documents. The house on Maple Ridge is sold. Don't contact me again. I attached every photo, every document, every piece of evidence Thomas Kellerman and I had gathered. Bank statements showing the stolen money, insurance papers with my forged signature, Pictures of Derek Walsh's cigarette butts scattered in my crawlspace like breadcrumbs leading to the truth. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I pressed it, 15 years of marriage would end with an email and a pile of evidence. No conversation, no chance for explanations or apologies. Just facts, delivered like a pest control report. I pressed send. The message showed delivered almost instantly. I imagined Amber's phone buzzing in some hotel room, probably lying next to Derek Walsh while they planned their future with my money. The thought should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt hollow. I set the phone on the counter and walked away. The silence in the townhouse was different from the family home. Not peaceful, just empty. Like the difference between choosing to be alone and having loneliness thrust upon you. 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with incoming calls. Amber flashed on the screen again and again, the vibration making it dance across the counter. I watched it ring, feeling strangely detached from the drama unfolding in whatever hotel room she was sharing with Derek Walsh. On the 7th call, I picked up the phone and stared at her name. 15 years of marriage, and it was ending with a blocked contact. I pressed the button and watched her name disappear from my screen. Then I blocked Derek Walsh's number too, though he hadn't called yet. The finality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. After 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a house, a life built together, it ended with a blocked number and an empty townhouse. I opened a beer, my first drink in months. The bottle was cold against my palm, condensation dripping onto the bare counter. Outside, I could hear other families having dinner, children laughing, the normal sounds of suburban evening life continuing, as if my world hadn't just imploded. I unpacked my tools in the small garage, arranging them with the same methodical precision I'd always used. Socket wrenches, pesticide sprayers, motion detectors, the tools of my trade that had ultimately revealed the truth about my marriage. Each tool had its place, its purpose. Unlike everything else in my life right now, I pulled out a framed photo of Maya and Connor from last year's camping trip, their faces bright with joy as they roasted marshmallows over our campfire. Maya had been so proud of starting the fire herself, and Connor had insisted on making s'mores until he was covered in chocolate and marshmallow. Simple moments when our family felt solid, unbreakable. I set the photo on my workbench, the only decoration in the sterile space. They'd hate me for this, at least at first. How do you explain to a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old that their mother is a thief and a liar? How do you tell them that the house they grew up in is gone, sold out from under them while they were away? The doorbell rang, making me jump. For a moment, panic shot through me. Had Amber somehow gotten my address already? But it was just a delivery driver with mail forwarding from the old house. Bills, mostly, and a letter from Maya's school about upcoming parent-teacher conferences. I signed for the packages mechanically, the driver oblivious to the drama. Normal life continuing, indifferent to the destruction I'd caused. After closing the door, I stared at Maya's school letter. Would I even be allowed at the conference? The weight of what I'd lost began to settle in my chest like a stone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Probably Amber using Derek Walsh's phone, or maybe Derek himself. I didn't read it. I turned the phone face down on the counter and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, other families were having dinner, their windows glowing warm against the darkening sky. Children's laughter carried on the evening air. A father pushed his daughter on a tire swing in the yard across the street. Normal families doing normal things while I sat alone in my victory. I'd built my case methodically, executed my plan perfectly, protected myself financially. The house was sold, the evidence delivered, my assets secured. By any measure, I'd won. But sitting alone in my new house, surrounded by boxes and silence, winning felt a lot like losing. I opened a box labeled Family Photos and found our wedding album buried beneath Christmas pictures and vacation snapshots. amber and white, radiant with hope and possibility. Me in my ill-fitting rental tux, believing in forever. We looked so young, so certain that love was enough to build a life on. I closed the album without looking further and placed it back in the box. Tomorrow I'd call Patricia about custody arrangements. Tomorrow I'd start the process of rebuilding my life from the ground up. But tonight, I sat in my victory, hollow as the empty house I'd left behind. The pest control specialist who'd found the infestation and eliminated it completely. The only problem was, sometimes the cure was worse than the disease. I'd saved my financial future but lost my family in the process. Protected myself from betrayal by destroying everything worth protecting. Outside, the father across the street was helping his daughter down from the tire swing, both of them laughing at some private joke. I watched them walk toward their house, hand in hand, and wondered if I'd ever have moments like that with Maya and Connor again. The townhouse settled around me with small creaks and sighs, a new house learning to hold the weight of an old man's regrets.